Get ready for the big revival. The real estate revival, that is. Now on 77 WABC, your New York weekend.
Get ready for the big revival.
It's Rand on Real Estate with Greg Rand.
Welcome to Rand on Real Estate. Getting ready for the big real estate revival on 77 WABC. The website is gregrand.com. We've got a blog on there. We've got highlights from previous shows and some clips of me on Fox News and Fox Business Network talking about things just like this. And we're going to be focusing right now on the Great Depression. But I want you to stick around for the last segment because we've got somebody coming on the air who lived through it and did what it took to survive and even thrive through it. And that should be, it's the first time I've ever heard anybody talk about the Great Depression and not talk about the soup line. So let's look forward to that. But the Great Depression, what really happened? Let me just give you kind of a historical timeline. In 1918, World War I ended, and that was the worst at that time war that America had been involved in. Well, I shouldn't say that because I guess the Civil War was even worse, but you know what I'm talking about, once in a generation. And during the war, the agricultural industry in America was the biggest industry, and after the war, it was the biggest industry, meaning it generated more GDP and it employed more Americans than any other industry. And it was supplying wheat and grain and all kinds of other products to the war effort. And on as the war effort went on, the output, the exports of the agricultural industry kept growing and growing and growing. Well, when the war ended, because the federal government knew that all those jobs, they couldn't afford to have all those jobs be lost, a period kicked in where on the one hand you had government policy where they were continuing to compensate the farms to keep producing these agricultural materials. They kept doing it because they wanted to keep people in jobs, but they didn't actually have a market to buy those things. And two things happened. One, spent a lot of money, and two, they destabilized the prices of those products across the globe, and it had an impact in the macroeconomic world of destabilizing the economy. But you've heard of the Roaring Twenties, okay? So a couple of years after World War I ended, we had the Roaring Twenties, and the Roaring Twenties sound a heck of a lot like the Roaring 2000s. People were making money. Businesses were flourishing. Everyday people were investing in everything. Okay, the stock market had an unprecedented number of investors in it and dollars in it. There were companies whose stock prices were way out of whack with how much profit they actually generated. This sounds kind of familiar, right? How about this? You had banks that started inventing new ways for everyday people, real estate investors, to control property. I read a letter that was written by a lawyer to a friend of his back then who said, everyone I know in town, from the butcher to the baker to the barber, they're all land